Hey, thank you so much for being here.
People in Chicago love you.
They're nice. They're nice people here.
They are wonderful.
You've got a
people.
wonderful state here.
Absolutely.
Barack Obama, who was once the most powerful man in the world, is currently confronted with a decision that could completely alter the course of history. The moment of reckoning has arrived after years of being in the public eye, being involved in controversies and fighting political battles. The verdict is in, and it is significantly more severe than anyone could have possibly imagined. There are rumors that are quickly spreading about shocking consequences, which has left both supporters and critics in a state of shock. In what specific ways will this affect his legacy, and what exactly took place? Hold on to your hats, because this information is going to send shockwaves far and wide across the country. The legacy of Barack Obama is currently being examined. The question that you might be asking yourself is, what exactly is going on with Barack Obama? There is a lot of speculation going on, and the headlines are all over the place. The sentence that he received is final, and many people believe that it does not look good. However, before we are able to peel back the layers of this situation, let us take a moment to pause and reflect on his journey, the significant moments along the way, the impact he had, and the timeless legacy that is currently being scrutinized. On the 20th of January in 2009, Barack Obama became the 44th President of the United States of America. This momentous occasion was a momentous occasion in the history of the United States. Not only was he the first African-American president, but he was also the first multiracial president and the first commander-in-chief to be born in Hawaii. His family history was extraordinary, and his rise to power was motivational. He won victories over Republican Senator John McCain in 2008 and former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney in 2012, earning himself 2 consecutive terms in the White House. His path to the presidency was not an easy one, but this did not prevent him from achieving his goal of becoming president. His presidency is still considered by political analysts and historians to be among the most influential political administrations in the history of modern America. His tenure came to an official end on January 20th, 2017, when Republican Donald Trump was sworn in as his successor. He had served for 8 years prior to this momentous occasion. Obama's presidency was characterized by prompt and decisive action from the very beginning of his tenure as president. It was during his first 100 days in office that he signed the Lilly-Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, which was designed to eliminate the wage gap between men and women and to guarantee equal pay for equal work. In addition, healthcare was a priority for him, and he took immediate action to expand the Children's Health Insurance Program, also known as CHIP. This was done to ensure that millions of children with low incomes had access to medical care. It was during his administration that efforts were made towards a more comprehensive reform of the healthcare system. These efforts laid the groundwork for the Affordable Care Act, which would later become one of his most significant and controversial accomplishments. In addition to the healthcare system, President Obama made significant actions in other areas of policy. With the promise of a government that places a high priority on transparency, his administration introduced new ethics guidelines with the intention of reducing the influence of lobbyists in Washington for the better. Additionally, he was a vocal advocate for LGBTQ rights on the international stage, supporting declarations made by the United Nations that called for the protection of LGBTQ individuals all over the world. Additionally, he took a progressive stance on the subject of scientific research. As a result of his decision to remove restrictions on embryonic stem cell research, national debates on science, ethics, and the advancement of medical technology were rekindled. Obama's legacy is still complicated. He is praised for instilling hope, but he is also criticized for leading to polarization. The policies he implemented were met with vehement opposition. Executive orders sparked controversy, and decisions made by foreign governments fueled debates about his impact on the world. Despite the passage of time, the scrutiny continued to intensify. A thorough examination and re-examination was performed on each and every speech, decision, and controversy that occurred during his presidency. His presidency was seen by some as a period of missed opportunities and political battles, while others saw him as a transformative leader who left an undeniable mark on the history of the United States. The discussion regarding his legacy has taken an unexpected turn as a result of the news that his so-called final sentence has been making waves. Now the question is, how will history evaluate him in the future? When compared to the growing number of controversies, will the weight of his accomplishments suffice to stand tall? And what is even more important is the question of how all of this is connected to the sentence that has been deemed final at this point. Keep an eye out. The meteoric rise of Barack Obama from local organizer to national figure before history reaches its conclusion. Let's take a step back and investigate how Barack Obama rose to prominence. From the beginning, it was crystal clear that he had a vision of a united and just America. However, how could he bring about genuine change on a significant scale? From the beginning, he was cautious. In a single interview, he admitted that he was still in the process of increasing his record of service and that he would only consider running for office if he believed that he could have a more significant impact. When we least anticipated it, that moment arrived. In a period of time that was less than 2 years later, Barack Obama made his debut in the political arena by running for the Illinois State Senate. As soon as he disclosed his choice, even his closest allies expressed their skepticism. They told him that running was a very unlikely option. For what seemed like a political lottery ticket, why would you risk 2 years of your life? Yet Obama was able to see beyond the odds. When he was sworn in as the state senator for Illinois' 13th district on January 8, 1997, it marked the beginning of an ascent that would defy expectations. He would go on to become influential in the state. His subsequent action, on the other hand, was not a smooth one. An ambitious attempt was made by him in the year 2000 to unseat Bobby Rush, a former member of the Black Panther Party and a well-established figure in the political landscape of Chicago. Regarding the challenge, there was skepticism. What did it take for a relatively newcomer to take on an opponent who was so well-established? According to the findings, the skeptics were correct. It was a significant defeat for Obama. On the other hand, rather than retreating, he regrouped. In the process of refining his strategy and honing his message, he was able to easily secure a second term in the Illinois Senate legislature. Suddenly, the moment arrived that would forever alter everything. A speech that President Obama gave at the Democratic National Convention in 2004 was so powerful that it electrified the entire country. He proclaimed, "There is no such thing as a Black America and a white America," and he did not speak in the language of interest groups, but rather of unity between people. The United States of America is one of the countries. That speech propelled him into the national spotlight and assisted him in securing a membership in the United States Senate seat available. The year 2006 saw an increase in the volume of rumors regarding a possible presidential run. Friends urged him to seize the opportunity while it was still available. At first, he was hesitant, and he told himself that Michelle wouldn't be okay with it. However, by the year 2008, there was no longer any hesitation. The campaign that he ran was unlike anything that had ever been seen before, because it combined grassroots activism with cutting-edge digital strategies. It turned out that his ability to organize communities, which he had honed during his time as an organizer, was extremely valuable. As soon as the results were in, a new chapter in history was written. The heartbreak that shook a presidency, a moment that served as a defining moment. One of the most significant events that occurred during his presidency continues to have a significant impact on discussions regarding his legacy. This event rekindled a heated debate on a national level and left an indelible mark on the nation. On the 14th of December in 2012, the unthinkable occurred. Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut, was the location of a brutal shooting that resulted in the deaths of 20 kindergarten students and 6 teachers. The tragedy made waves of disbelief travel throughout the country. However, for President Obama, it brought up a lot of personal issues. During one of his conversations, he expressed that whenever he thought about those children, it would make him angry. There was a palpable sense of the gravity of the situation as he addressed the nation. Even the people who were around him, including staff members, journalists, and security personnel, who were trained to maintain their composure, struggled to keep their emotions in check as he read the names of the victims, paying tribute to lives that were taken from them much too soon. This moment was supposed to be the one that brought about a complete transformation. Obama made a concerted effort to reform the gun control laws in the months that followed. Considering that nearly 90% of Americans are in favor of expanding background checks, it appeared to be an easy victory. On the other hand, the bill was rejected by the Senate on April 17, 2013. As he stood in the Rose Garden, surrounded by the families of those who had lost loved ones at Sandy Hook, President Obama did not hold back. He stated with a clear expression of exasperation that today was a pretty embarrassing day for Washington. For political gain, he was accused of using the families of victims, according to his critics. However, he made a retort. Are they being serious? Do we really believe that thousands of families whose lives have been lost as a result of gun violence do not have the right to have their voices heard on this matter? His anger was unfiltered and his dissatisfaction was unmistakable. The gravity of the situation was not lost on him at any point. It served as a jarring reminder of the constraints that his power imposed, even though he was the leader of the free world. As a result of his inability to successfully pass legislation through Congress, he resorted to executive orders in January of 2016, announcing new measures to control firearms. However, he was aware that it was not sufficient. He went on to explain that the founders had purposefully established a system that effectively distributes power. A measure that was supposed to safeguard democracy had instead turned into an obstacle to forward movement. Now, many years later, the whispers are becoming increasingly audible. Is there a possibility that this particular moment is connected to the rumors swirling about his sentence? There are those who believe that his unyielding stance on the issue of gun control has created powerful adversaries. There are those who are curious about whether the consequences of this defining failure have come back to haunt him. One thing is certain, despite the fact that the truth is still unknown. There are origins in the past for what is occurring right now, and it's possible that the consequences are finally beginning to catch up with you. Both the debt crisis and the specter of controversy are present. On the day that Barack Obama took office as President of the United States, January 20th, 2009, the country was in the midst of one of the most severe economic crises in the history of modern times. Approximately half of the total annual economic output of the country was represented by the national debt at that time. This debt, however, increased as the Great Recession continued to worsen, and the government worked feverishly to bring the economy back under control. This staggering increase occurred between the years 2009 and 2012, and by the year 2014, it had reached nearly 3/4 of the gross domestic product in the United States. As a response, other countries, particularly those in Europe, implemented stringent austerity measures, which included reducing public spending in order to bring their deficits under control. However, President Obama chose a different path. In 2010, he established the National Commission on Fiscal Responsibility and Reform, which is more commonly referred to as the Simpson-Bowles Commission. He was determined to find a solution that would be effective over the long term. It was a challenging assignment for them. Develop a plan to bring the ever-increasing national debt under control without impeding the progress of the economic recovery. Following several months of investigation, the Commission presented a number of recommendations, each of which carries significant repercussions or implications. A number of these measures included a reduction in spending on the military, a rollback of tax breaks on mortgages and employer-sponsored health insurance, and an increase in the age at which Social Security recipients are eligible to retire. In addition to this, they proposed significant reductions in the budgets of various government programs, such as Medicare, Medicaid, and the salaries of federal employees. However, despite the critical nature of the issue, Congress never actually voted on these proposals in an official capacity. Despite the fact that lawmakers were sharply divided, the plan was unable to gain traction because it was too controversial. Nevertheless, the recommendations of the Commission had an impact on subsequent budget discussions and contributed to the establishment of a framework for subsequent efforts to address the national debt, even though they were not officially approved. While those who supported it saw it as a responsible blueprint for fiscal discipline, those who opposed it saw it as an attack on essential social programs. However, while Obama's economic policies were shaping the future of the nation's finances, a separate but equally significant issue was developing. This issue would go on to define some of the most contentious aspects of his presidency. It became a point of contention, drawing criticism from both political allies and opponents, that the delicate balance that exists between the government's transparency and its secrecy can be dangerous. Critics argued that his administration selectively controlled information, revealing only those decisions that served its interests while concealing other crucial decisions from public scrutiny. This was despite the fact that his administration placed an emphasis on openness through governance. This mounting tension would eventually give rise to some of the most contentious moments of his presidency, including classified surveillance programs, military interventions, and intelligence operations that were concealed from the American people. Even though the economic crisis was beginning to ease, the weight of these decisions continued to loom over his legacy, which raised a question that would continue to linger long after he had left office. Has his leadership been successful in guiding the nation towards long-term stability, or has it merely been successful in masking more fundamental, unresolved issues that are waiting to resurface? Promises, secrets, and the fallout of Obama's transparency dilemma. When Barack Obama took office in January 2009, he made a bold promise that his administration would be the most transparent in the history of the United States. When he made this pledge, very few people could have predicted that it would become a defining challenge that would shape the successes and controversies that he would experience during his presidency. Even though his sentence has been handed down, the immensity of those decisions continues to linger. Openness in government was a priority for Obama from the very beginning. Before being signed into law, his administration mandated that executive orders and legislation be made available online for public review. This was one of the many comprehensive reforms that have been implemented. The restrictions that had been placed on accessing presidential records were lifted, and he instructed government agencies to give priority to providing information to the general public. The Open Government Directive and the Open Government Partnership were two of the initiatives that were launched with the intention of fostering collaboration between the government and citizens, with the goal of encouraging federal agencies to be more forthcoming with data. However, early on, there were apparent flaws in this vision. In the first month of his presidency, President Obama twice disregarded his own commitment to public review, putting in place measures without allowing for the online scrutiny that was promised. Although he was successful in bringing the number of classified documents down to an all-time low, his administration secretly relied on legal memos that were kept secret and the state secrets privilege, both of which were loopholes that enabled them to conceal information under the guise of protecting national security. The tension between openness and secrecy increased throughout the course of his presidency, particularly when his own administration became the target of internal challenges. Obama's decision to release memos from the Bush administration that exposed the controversial interrogation methods used by the CIA was one of the earliest flashpoints between the two parties. The extent of the agency's strategies was brought to light by this decision, which was a significant step towards accountability. On the other hand, Obama's attitude towards those who exposed secrets from within his own government told a very different story. Despite the fact that he was willing to shed light on previous administrations. There was then a severe crackdown on those who blew the whistle. With the help of the Espionage Act of 1917, which is rarely used, his administration brought charges against government employees who were accused of leaking classified information at a rate that had never been seen before. Thomas Drake, a former employee of the National Security Agency, Stephen Jinwoo Kim, a contractor for the State Department, and John Kiriakou, a former analyst for the Central Intelligence Agency, were among those who were charged. In the event that they disclosed information that they believed the general public had a right to know, each of them faced severe legal consequences. However, the case of Chelsea Manning was probably the one that received the most attention. When I was a U.S. Manning, an intelligence analyst for the United States Army, compromised thousands of diplomatic cables and military reports and published them on WikiLeaks. This action caused shockwaves to travel all over the world. The subsequent trial was one of the most closely watched in the history of modern times, and it sparked heated debates about the freedom of the press, the transparency of the government, and the protection of national security. It is not unnoticed that the administration has taken a hostile stance towards individuals who blow the whistle. Obama's detractors asserted that his administration was more concerned with punishing leaks than it was with maintaining transparency, and they accused him of waging an all-out war against those who dared to challenge the secrecy of the government. as time went on, it became impossible to ignore the contradiction. What justification could an administration that professed to be an advocate for transparency offer for such a relentless prosecution? As the crackdown became more severe, the discussion regarding accountability and confidentiality reached a point where it was boiling over. Were we talking about the safety of the nation? In addition, did the administration go too far in its efforts to silence dissent? Was the promise of transparency made by Obama ever fulfilled? Or was it merely an illusion? Don't leave us as we continue to unearth more mysteries. Obama's ability to strike a balance, resulting in a nation that is deeply divided. President Barack Obama was more than just a leader. He was someone who built bridges, an individual who held the belief that it was possible to find common ground by bringing together opposing sides. He approached governance with a calm and strategic mindset, regardless of whether he was dealing with Republicans and Democrats, corporate leaders and citizens of the working class, or friends and adversaries from around the world. His approach to leadership was characterized by a focus on diplomacy, negotiation, and providing a long-term vision rather than taking immediate and forceful action. Through the use of this strategy, he was able to achieve significant legislative victories, the most notable of which was the Affordable Care Act in 2010. He secured the most significant healthcare reform in decades by engaging in discussions, making compromises, and carefully maneuvering his way through the government. However, the fact that he was so adamant about playing the long game came at a price. Many of his supporters, particularly progressives, were of the opinion that he lacked sufficient bravery. Additionally, they desired aggressive action, particularly with regard to issues such as economic inequality and climate change. As far as they were concerned, his willingness to negotiate frequently meant watering down policies that had the potential to bring about significant change. On the other hand, Republicans regarded him as an overreaching president who expanded the scope of government control to an extent that was significantly beyond what they considered ethical. Their criticism was fueled by his economic stimulus plan, which was a response to the financial crisis that occurred in 2008, as well as Wall Street reforms and decisions regarding foreign policy. The growth of the Tea Party movement further exacerbated the divide, making it even more difficult for members of both parties to work together. In the midterm elections of 2010, Republicans were able to take control of the House of Representatives, which significantly hindered his ability to pass additional ambitious legislation without engaging in major political battles. As each obstacle presented itself, President Obama maintained his composure, relying on patience and deliberate decision-making, rather than acting in a reactive manner. Some people interpreted this as evidence of his leadership and a sign that he is a president who is committed to making progress that is sustainable. Some people interpreted it as a sign of weakness, a refusal to make a forceful effort to bring about change. During his presidency, he demonstrated both the power and the limitations of attempting to bring together a nation that was deeply divided. What if, however, Obama's steady approach was not a sign of strength, but rather of resistance? Did his leadership promote unity, or did it deepen divisions? Truth is a complicated matter. Keep an eye out. The verdict given to Barack Obama is final, and it is not good. His arrival at the White House was accompanied by a surge of optimism. He was a leader who advocated for unity and transparency in government. On the other hand, as time went on, cracks started to appear in the image. Did he ever feel like he had complete control, or did he end up being swept away by the demands of power? It was during his presidency that defining moments occurred, but the revelations that exposed a hidden world behind closed doors were among the most damaging of those moments. The shocking revelations made by Edward Snowden in 2013 shattered the trust of the general public. The former contractor for the National Security Agency disclosed that the United States government was conducting extensive surveillance programs, which included the covert collection of phone records, emails, and online activity from millions of users in the United States. There was a rift in the nation. It is unclear whether Edward Snowden was a hero for exposing the overreach of the government or a traitor who compromised national security. Even though the Obama administration made a valiant effort to defend itself, the damage had already been done by the time Snowden fled to Russia. It was precisely those individuals who had previously lauded Obama's assurances of openness who now regarded those statements as meaningless. The trust that he had painstakingly built up was beginning to wither away before his very eyes. Nevertheless, this was not the only obstacle that caused his presidency to slide into a downward spiral. The House of Representatives suffered a crushing defeat in the midterm elections of 2010, which was fueled by frustration over the slow economic recovery and the rise of the Tea Party movement. Following the Republican takeover of the House of Representatives, John Boehner succeeded Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House. In an admission that many Americans no longer felt that they were better off under his leadership, President Obama himself referred to it as a shellacking. The shift in power resulted in a never-ending series of political battles concerning healthcare and spending, and the fact that Republicans are now in control of the process of redrawing congressional districts made the path that lay ahead particularly challenging. As the numbers were analyzed, they revealed a pattern of fluctuating fortunes. To put that into perspective, his approval rating was an astounding 82% when he took office in 2009. On the other hand, once actual decisions were made, that support quickly dwindled. By the end of 2009, it had dropped to 50 years. Wall Street reform and the Affordable Care Act both contributed to a further decline in those numbers, which reached 45% in the year 2010. As soon as Republicans took control of the House of Representatives, the opposition only became more vocal. His standing was further weakened by the debt ceiling battle that took place in 2011, and by the time he faced re-election in 2012, many people were wondering if he would be able to maintain his position. On the other hand, he was successful in winning a second term, defeating Mitt Romney. But the turbulent conditions did not abate. As a result of the government shutdown that occurred in 2013, his approval ratings dropped into the low 40s, and they remained there for the majority of his second term in office. Due to the fact that there were political conflicts, economic difficulties, and increasing resistance from Congress, it appeared that the unity that he had once promised was becoming increasingly difficult to achieve. A number of Americans began to take a more moderate stance towards him as his presidency came to a close in 2016, and his approval ratings experienced a slight increase. On the other hand, the finished numbers painted a bleak picture. Although only 18% of Republicans continued to back him, 95% of Democrats continued to back him. After having once put its trust in his vision, the nation was now deeply divided along ideological lines. Had he made an error in estimating the significance of his own commitments? Is it possible that the system itself had made it impossible for any leader to actually bring about the change that they claimed to represent? It was still difficult to find the answers, but one thing was crystal clear. At the end of his presidency, Barack Obama had left behind a legacy that would be the subject of debate for many years to come. But what if the bold vision that Obama had was never enough to bring together a nation that was divided? Were the limits of leadership revealed, or were they redefined during his presidency? Below, please share your thoughts. Be sure to give it a like and subscribe to our channel.